Premier Doug Ford and his new cabinet take the oath of office at the Royal Ontario Museum. We're going to have all the highlights coming up.
Smashing in the window with a hammer.
6 teenagers are facing numerous charges after a failed jewelry store robbery in the Wilson and Dufferin area.
And today is the last full day of winter. We made it. Spring officially arrives tomorrow morning, and we're getting a preview today.
This is Live at 5. Hello, I'm Arda Zakarian.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us here, and welcome to Live at 5. Ontario Premier Doug Ford and his new cabinet were sworn in today, 3 weeks after winning a third consecutive majority government.
Let's go live now to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman, who is at the Royal Ontario Museum for more on today's swearing-in ceremony, which was held inside. What did we see today, Beatrice?
Well, we saw the Premier and his cabinet, Arda and Lena, talking a lot about national sovereignty, about national pride, and also about national unity. The entirety of the Premier's speech from start to finish was focused on tariffs, saying that despite generations of friendship, close relations, that the relationship between Canada and the U.S. is now in the toughest times ever and will be for the next several years. And so here's a bit of what Premier had to say in front of a room full of his caucus members and supporters who were all invited here today.
We are allies, we are partners, we are friends, and we are both better off as a result. But the last few months and the next few years are going to challenge our friendship with the United States like we've never seen before. President Trump is going to extreme lengths to impose his tariffs on the world, no matter the cost to Americans.
To the COVID-19 pandemic was the Deputy Prime Minister. She walked in talking to me about the fact that they call each other therapists. She met with the Premier yesterday at his home, and the heart of their conversation was about provincial and federal relationships and working hand in hand to help combat the tariffs. Certainly that was the message from some of the key ministers in the Premier's caucus as well. Just 2 of them scrummed with reporters after they were sworn in. Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy, who of course keeps his portfolio, and Stephen Lecce, who retains Minister of Energy, but now mining also added on to his responsibilities. And Stephen Lecce saying quite clearly, this is not status quo in the province of Ontario. These are tough times, and the province needs to do what it can to help build itself up to be better prepared and shield itself against the threat of these tariffs as well. So here's a bit of what we heard from the energy minister.
The world has changed. President Trump has upended the world order. And we're going to need every government, every regulator, every agency to move with absolute speed to get shovels in the ground on the essential mining and critical minerals that the world needs. Because the choice for our allies will be Chinese products or Canadian. And you heard the Premier. You heard Peter speak about this. We want to build in this country. We want to refine in this country. We want value-added jobs in this country for our workers.
As for some of the other key portfolios, Sylvia Jones maintains her portfolio as the Minister of Health and Deputy Premier. No changes either in transportation or infrastructure. One of the key changes we did see, and perhaps one of the only ones actually, Arda and Lena, is Paul Calandra. He was the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. He's now been shuffled to the important portfolio of education as the province gets prepared in the next year or so to start negotiations with some of the teachers' unions once again. And we know Paul Calandra in the past has been kind of the attack dog for the Ford government, someone that the Premier would put in these roles where he needs him to act as one of these attack dogs. Keep in mind, on the housing file, Calandra failed to meet a lot of the housing stats and starts that the Premier actually wanted to meet. So he gets a new role today, and certainly another 4 years of a majority Ford government. Back to you.
All right, Beatrice Vaisman on Doug Ford's new cabinet. Thanks so much, Beatrice. And as Beatrice mentioned, the former Deputy Prime Minister. Chrystia Freeland was in the crowd. It wasn't just Conservatives attending that swearing-in ceremony. She talked to us about her personal relationship with Premier Ford. We know they're friends. And she also talked about taking on the U.S.
I had a great meeting with the Premier in his house just yesterday. And you're right, the Premier and I struck up an unusual friendship during COVID. We called each other's therapist. And I think that is really good news for Canada. I think Canada works best when we can work across party lines, when, a Liberal at that time, Deputy Prime Minister can work with a Conservative Premier. We work for the same people.
Opposition leader Marit Stiles was sworn in today at Queen's Park.
Stiles was elected to a third term in last month's vote. She replaced Andrea Horwath as NDP leader in 2022.
I think every single one of us in opposition and in government needs to be focused on the pushback against these tariffs and against the threat to our sovereignty by the United States and Donald Trump. So every single minister and every single MPP should be involved, and every party in addressing that challenge.
We have breaking news from North York. One person is dead and another has life-threatening injuries after a high-rise fire this afternoon.
Yeah, crews responded to the building at 45 Grenoble Drive near Don Mills in Eglinton before 3:30. We're working on getting you images from that scene, but here's what we can tell you. In the meantime, the fire was reported to be on the 21st floor, so this is a high-rise fire. Toronto Fire tells CP24 a male and female were transported to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and we're now learning the female victim has died. We do have a crew heading to the scene. Our Phil Perkins is on his way there. Keep it here on CP24 as we follow this developing story, a deadly fire in North York.
In the meantime, let's head over to Adjoa with a check on our traffic and our commute home. How's it looking, Adjoa?
Well, very, very busy, Arda and Lena. We are dealing with this ongoing cleanup of a vehicle fire that happened on the Toronto-bound lanes of the QEW. This was past Burloak. Still the same number of lanes are blocked. It's the two right and the end of the on-ramp lane for Burloak. But you do have the HOV and that left lane getting by, but the backlog is still there from well before Brent. Then up on the 401, I do have a bit of good news. We had problems eastbound 401 in the express past Dixie. Long-standing collision involving a transport was blocking a couple of lanes. It cleared. Has that problem cleared? New problems replacing it. Further east on the 401 in the express, just past Victoria Park, you'll find the right lane blocked following a collision, and the delays are still there if you're traveling on the Gardner. Very, very slow as you exit the downtown core from Jarvis to Dufferin. Outside of camera view, a collision on Jane and Annette, that's brand new, and a long-standing collision blocking lanes on Bloor just west of Old Mill. I'll send it back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Well, this is making headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump says he would have an easier time if Canada keeps its Liberal Prime Minister.
Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya for more on Trump's comments. Lindsay, walk us through what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, this was on an interview on Fox News, and it's also interesting to see just how much Canada and Canadian politics, Lena and Arda, is coming up right now in American media. Usually we're not talked about too much down there, but right now we seem to be the talk of the town. We're talked about quite a bit. They know who Pierre Poilievre is. They know who Mark Carney is. And Donald Trump obviously talking about Canada a lot right now, especially when it comes to that tariff trade war. So he was talking about this today on Fox News, and he said he'd rather deal with a Liberal than a Conservative. He ultimately said he doesn't actually care who wins the election, but he also took aim at Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre today, and he said, quote, "The Conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things." Whether this is maybe some reverse psychology, we don't know at this point. Obviously, Donald Trump looking to deal with someone when it comes to this ongoing tariff issue that we have between the U.S. and Canada. There's still negotiations on Canada's side to potentially end these tariffs for good. But obviously, Donald Trump looking at who best to deal with that between him and whoever the next Prime Minister of Canada is. Here's more on what Donald Trump had to say today.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So you're in. He kept talking during this interview also about Canada becoming the 51st state. He said that America doesn't need Canada's energy, doesn't need Canada's lumber, and doesn't need Canada's cars. Now, the anchor did say that she kind of called Trump out on saying that Trump is tougher on Canada than he is on many other of the U.S.'s greatest adversaries. And he said that's only because Canada, he said, is meant to be the 51st state. So again, obviously, Donald Trump and a lot of other Americans watching what's happening here in Canada very closely. We know that there's going to be a federal election called within days now by Prime Minister Mark Carney, the two frontrunners, the Liberal leader Mark Carney, as well as the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, battling it out. And it's interesting, Lena and Arda, to see just how closely Donald Trump is watching this. And he said his end game is that he doesn't want to have a big deficit. So there you go.
Donald Trump's going to be talked about a lot on the campaign trail. Lindsay, thank you so much for this. And staying with federal politics, Prime Minister Mark Carney, he is set to host a meeting with the country's premiers later this week.
The Prime Minister's office and the office of Premier Doug Ford confirmed the Friday meeting and some of its details. Carney's press secretary says he intends to work with the premiers to strengthen the economy and discuss unjustified trade actions by the United States.
Meanwhile, with a federal election call expected any day now, the Liberal Party has only nominated about half the candidates it needs to have a full complement on the country's ballots. There will be 343 ridings contested in the upcoming vote, but a Liberal spokesperson says the party has only nominated 185 candidates. The Liberals have seen their polling numbers jump during the recent leadership race and in the midst of Mark Carney's victory.
The Conservatives will not allow media on board leader Pierre Poilievre's planes and buses during the next federal election, a break from long-standing traditions. National Campaign Director Jenny Byrne points to the rising cost of travel and the capacity for digital and remote access to public events as the reasons for the measure. Byrne also says that in recent years, media outlets have chosen to tag staff from local bureaus to cover events rather than fly journalists from Ottawa.
And Mayor Olivia Chow's executive committee has adopted her economic action plan in response to U.S. tariffs.
Chow and her economic action team unveiled their plan to fight tariffs on Monday, including changes to procurement policies in favor of Canadian suppliers. The plan also includes an industrial property tax deferral to help businesses who will be hit hard by tariffs.
We must act now. We will never back down. When we are being attacked, we will respond. This is the first step of our response. This is what we are going to be doing the first 30 days. We will also remain agile, flexible, and we will come back to City Council and our city managers here with a report about the impact of what our plan had been, and we will also map out what we're going to be doing next 60 days and the 90 days so that we have a step-by-step approach. It's part of a journey, it's part of a plan.
And Councillor Josh Matlow, for one, is voicing concern about the speed with which the plan is being implemented and its potential financial impact on our city.
By simply banning all U.S. companies from bidding on contracts at the City of Toronto, without knowing what the impact will be on taxpayers, what hole will be in our budget, how high the cost will escalate on certain jobs that need to get done, and also within some of the U.S.-based companies, like companies from Canada and around the world, how many Canadian jobs who are employed by those companies could be affected. I think it's irresponsible to simply just say no to all of that without knowing what no means.
The tariff response plan will now go to City Council for discussion and approval next week.
It's 5:14, 21 degrees out there. You're watching Live at 5.
York Regional Police say 6 teens are facing charges following a failed jewelry store robbery in Toronto. CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan will join us next with a closer look at this takedown.
Welcome back. 6 teenagers are facing a number of charges after a failed jewelry store robbery in the Wilson and Dufferin area.
Let's bring in CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan for a closer look at this takedown. The images that this helicopter took, this police helicopter, are quite amazing to see this actually happen in real time.
Well, I think what that does is it shows just how important a helicopter can be. It was capturing that entire sequence of events in real time, and had any of those suspects got away on foot, the chopper would have been able to follow them as well. It would have made it much easier and safer for the officers who would have pursued them.
And can you talk about the severity of the charges, Steve? Because this is serious.
Certainly is. So all 6 of them, 3 16-year-olds and 3 17-year-olds, were charged with robbery with a weapon, disguise with intent, possession of stolen property obtained by crime. That vehicle, by the way, was the stolen vehicle that the 6 kids were in when they got out of it to go commit the robbery. And one of the 17-year-olds is charged with possession of an automobile master key. That's an odd charge, but it's in the criminal code. The master key is typically used by car dealerships to start many of the cars. So one of these 17-year-olds allegedly had in his possession one of these master keys.
Let's take a look at this footage right now. We see the suspects get into the car, and then what happens here?
Yeah.
So you're looking at police cars. They're disabling that stolen vehicle because what you don't want to do is have somebody get back in that car and drive away. Then you've got a vehicle pursuit, and that is always a risk for public safety. So their first order of business was to dislodge the runnings of that car, making sure that it was out of service, and then they were able to get out on foot and chase these 7 individuals. But the work that was done by the police to get those 6 people under arrest without any further incident is really remarkable when you think of the tension and the adrenaline that's going and the severity of these charges. These kids had sledgehammers in their hands. Wow. to smash the glass with. So they had weapons on them. So it was very good work by the police.
And a really big part of this investigation are the images that have now been provided to investigators by that police chopper, Steve.
That's right. That is basically your best evidence. You want to bring your best evidence to court, and there's nothing better. You've got eyewitness account, of course, but what even captures more than an eyewitness's account is what's being recorded by the chopper. So again, it shows just how important helicopters are when it comes to law enforcement.
Thank you so much for this, Steve. Appreciate your expertise and your analysis on this. Of course, 6 teens are now facing charges. Thank you so much. It's now 5:19. 21 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Canada is condemning China over the execution of Canadians. We're going to have more on the comments that were provided today. That's coming up on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Global Affairs Canada has confirmed they are aware of Canadians being executed in China earlier this year.
In a statement, Global Affairs says Canada strongly condemns China's use of the death penalty, which is irreversible and inconsistent with basic human dignity. Canada repeatedly called for clemency for these individuals at the senior-most levels and remains steadfast in its opposition to the use of the death penalty in all cases. No names have been released.
And the Chinese embassy released a statement which says China is a rule of law country. Whoever violates the law of China must be held accountable in accordance with the law. Drug-related crime is a severe crime recognized worldwide as extremely harmful to society and will be faced with severe penalties in all countries. It goes on to say China will always maintain a zero tolerance attitude toward the drug problem.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke for about an hour today.
The call comes a day after Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin and nearly 3 weeks after an infamous meeting between the pair in the Oval Office. In a social media post today, Trump said the call was to, quote, align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs as he seeks to bring about a ceasefire between the two countries. Trump said the talks were on track.
Путіна з президентом Сполучених Штатів Америки Дональдом Трампом, коли Путін
Before his call with Trump, the Ukrainian president said Russia's promise to not attack energy infrastructure is very much at odds with reality. Zelensky spoke alongside his Finnish counterpart in Helsinki today. He says last night, after Putin's phone call with the U.S. president, Russia launched 150 drones at Ukraine, some targeting energy facilities. The strikes hit civilian areas and damaged a hospital, and at least 147 patients had to be evacuated.
We are witnessing one of the largest prisoner exchanges since Russia invaded Ukraine. 175 Ukrainian prisoners of war were released from captivity today. 22 others, service members, were returned through separate channels outside the formal exchange process. Ukraine's president says some of those freed are severely wounded soldiers who were prosecuted by Russia on fabricated charges. Zelensky promised he won't stop until all their fighters are brought home.
It is now 5:24, 21 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Spring officially arrives tomorrow morning, but the GTA is getting a preview today. We'll find out the GTA residents how they are enjoying the warm weather today.
Welcome back. People are out enjoying the warm weather on this last full day of winter. Can you believe it?
I know. It's finally here. Yay. Actually, the forecast called for 18 degrees, but now we're up to 21.
Ooh.
And there's plenty of sunshine throughout the day. Many are taking advantage of the spring-like conditions to get out with the dog or go for a run on the boardwalk.
The water is getting warmer. It's getting sunnier. And I think spring is just around the corner.
Are you looking forward to it?
Oh, I am. So ready. Spring and summer. It's going to be the best summer yet.
Are you worried that maybe there's another snowfall on the way?
I hear that from people, and I would like not to focus on that. I don't think there's going to be another one.
Oh, it's beautiful, the weather and the wind. It's just very pleasing. Caressing your face, it's beautiful.
Are you looking forward to warmer weather?
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah, especially swimming in the swimming pool close by. It would be great.
I'll speak for myself. This winter was long, dark, snowy. I mean, we saw that historic snowfall. So, we made it. That says a lot.
We deserve 21 degrees. We deserve it.
We sure do. And tomorrow's forecast calls for a high of 13. So not quite 21 degrees, but there will be some sunshine. We'll see a chance of showers. Happy spring.
Yes, 5:28 and 21 degrees right now. This is Live at 5.
And we are following breaking news from North York this hour. One person is dead and another has life-threatening injuries after a high-rise fire this afternoon. We'll take you to that scene next.
We are following breaking news in North York. One person is dead and another has life-threatening injuries after a high-rise fire this afternoon on Grenoble Drive. We'll have more on this in moments.
Premier Doug Ford and his brand new cabinet take the oath of office at the Royal Ontario Museum. Who's in, who's out, what's changing in the midst of a trade war? We'll have all those details.
And 6 teenagers are facing numerous charges after a failed jewelry store robbery in the Wilson and Dufferin area. We'll have more on this.
And today is the last full day of winter. Spring officially arrives tomorrow morning, but we're already getting a preview today. It's 21 degrees out there.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena.
Toronto Fire Chief Jim Jessup is providing an update on a deadly fire in North York. Let's listen in live.
Toronto fire crews have completed the ventilation of smoke throughout the building. We have monitored the air. It has been deemed safe, and we are now allowing residents back up to their units as long as they're not on the 21st floor. The Toronto Fire Investigations Division has been notified, and they are en route, and they will work with Toronto Police Service and the Office of the Fire Marshal on the investigation of the origin, cause, and circumstances of this fire. I did have a chance to get up to the unit of origin with other senior staff. I can tell you the crews were met with absolute zero visibility, high heat, and significant flames once they located the seat of the fire. I want to thank the women and men of Toronto Fire Service for another fantastic job today. They did incredible work working their way into that unit and quickly locating 2 victims, transporting to the care of Toronto Paramedic Services. But unfortunately, one has been pronounced deceased and one is still fighting for their life.
Now, our understanding from Toronto Police is that it was the female died, and the male is still fighting for his life, and it's a middle-aged couple?
So I don't have the status on their relationship at all. It has been reported to me by the police that there is a female and a male, and it is the female that has been pronounced.
Now, we also heard that it started in the kitchen. Is that correct?
That will form part of the investigation. Way too early for me to comment on that at this point. As I said, the Toronto Fire investigators are en route, and they will certainly be able to speak to that along with the Office of the Fire Marshal in due course.
Now, how were you made aware of the fire? Was it a 911 call? Was it a smoke alarm? Was it a fire alarm? What exactly happened?
So Toronto Fire Service received the call. I'm not sure how the call came in. I'm not sure if it was from a monitoring company or from someone inside the apartment, but we did receive a call right away as soon as we had confirmation of smoke in this building. The incident commander escalated to a second alarm, and as I said, they made entry right away, were met with complete blackness, zero visibility, high heat, started their primary search, and were able to quickly locate both occupants and transport them to the care of Toronto Paramedic Services.
Was the fire contained to that unit?
The crews did an outstanding job once they were able to find the seat of the fire, so they were able to contain the fire to the suite of origin and to the unit of origin. There is certainly smoke and heat damage into the hallway, as well as some water damage, but our crews have done their air monitoring. The rest of the building is absolutely safe, which is why we've allowed the people to go back in, and we have ventilated smoke from the rest of the building.
So the whole building was originally evacuated?
I can't say we were sheltering some in place, but certainly a number of occupants left the building when they heard the fire alarm system, and Toronto Fire also sheltered a number in place, which is our common practice in high-rise fires. It is much safer to stay in your unit if it is safe to do so than to often venture out into the stairway and hallways.
Can you tell us the challenges that are presented to you when you are combating a fire on the 21st floor of a high-rise building?
And this is a challenge that, as I said, that we face more than any other fire service in Canada without question, especially being the vertical city we are. It is labor intensive. It is well known that it is 2.5 times the human resources for us to perform all the critical tasks simultaneously that are required in a high-rise fire. So that is why we require the resources that we do. And that is why we have special apparatus like our high-rise fire trucks, fire apparatus that respond to these fires with special equipment. So we are very well versed in fighting high-rise fires, especially in the city of Toronto. But it certainly speaks to the resources that we do require when we have these fires, because of all of the critical tasks that we have to do at once. We have to suppress the fire. We have to put crews at each stairwell. We have to ventilate the fire. We have to do primary and secondary searches, open roof hatches. So very labor intensive, but the crews here did another outstanding job today.
Thank you.
Have you identified two couple? Do you know their names?
No, I will not release that information. No, not to the next of kin notification. Great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
That's Fire Chief Jim Jessup providing an update on a deadly high-rise fire in North York. This happened on the 21st floor. That fire has since been contained, but we're now learning 2 victims, a male and a female, were found inside that unit. The female has died, and the other victim is fighting for his life.
Meanwhile, in provincial news, Ontario Premier Doug Ford and his new cabinet were sworn in today, 3 weeks after winning a 3rd consecutive majority government.
Let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman at the Royal Ontario Museum for more on today's swearing-in ceremony. Beatrice, you were watching it all. No major shakeups, but there was a really fiery speech from the Premier.
Absolutely, there was, Lena and Arda. The entirety of the Premier's speech actually focused on the relationship between Canada and the U.S. As he put it, for generations, the two countries enjoyed a deep friendship, international trade, a great relationship, strong allies. And the Premier was quite clear that today and for the next few years, that relationship between Canada and the U.S. is going to be challenged strictly because Donald Trump's threat of tariffs, not just on Canada, but across the entire world. And so the Premier is simply saying that protectionism being used by some politicians, referring to the American president, as a tool really to cause division and separation in the world. He called it a cheap form of nationalism, in fact. And so the Premier is certainly energized in his speech about national unity, about sovereignty, and really about national pride. So here's a taste of that speech that he delivered to his caucus, to his cabinet, and to all the guests of honor here at the Royal Ontario Museum.
We are allies. We are partners. We are friends. And we are both better off as a result. But the last few months and the next few years are going to challenge our friendship with the United States like we've never seen before. President Trump is going to extreme lengths to impose his tariffs on the world, no matter the cost to Americans.
And his cabinet ministers who spoke to us after the swearing-in ceremony talked about the need and the urgency in combating these tariffs as well. Energy Minister Stephen Lecce has one new responsibility added to his portfolio, and that's now he's the Minister of Energy and Mines. He was asked by reporters if the addition of these responsibilities indicates a new focus from the Doug Ford government on mining. We've heard the Premier talking a lot about critical minerals as of late, and the concern that Donald Trump is after Canada's and Ontario's critical minerals. And Stephen Lecce simply said, this is not business as usual in the province of Ontario. We've got to do everything we can to beef up our economy, our resources, to fight back against these tariffs. Also, Peter Bethlenfalvy maintains his portfolio in finance, and he also talked about the need to protect Ontario's fiscal blueprints here in terms of doing everything we can to protect the economy, to bolster it, and to focus on interprovincial trade as well. Listen.
I am prepared to spend billions of dollars because we campaign on a commitment to protect Ontarians, their economy, the jobs. So we are going to do what it takes. But let me tell you this as well. We got 2 credit rating upgrades, first time in over 2 decades. Our balance sheet is in the best shape it's been in a couple of decades. Our borrowing costs are the lowest across the country. So we come at it from a position of fiscal strength. But make no mistake, I'm committed to protecting Ontarians, just like we campaigned on. As the minister just mentioned, we've got to build more, faster. We have a mandate to do that.
Speaking of building, Paul Calandra was the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. He struggled to make any headway in terms of meeting the Premier's targets and the government's targets on building new homes in this province. He now shuffles over to the Minister of Education. That was the biggest change in today's cabinet. Otherwise, no new faces added, and really just a couple of minor shuffles beyond Minister Calandra. No changes either to health, to infrastructure, or to transport either. Back to you.
A lot of continuity in this new cabinet of Doug Ford's.
Jamie Ellerton, founding partner of Canaptus and conservative strategist, spoke about the challenges facing the Ford government.
Housing starts are down drastically right now. You could say part of that is interest rates in this high inflation environment, but a lot of it's taxation and red tape and how hard it is to get approvals to be able to get shovels in the ground. The provincial government, if they wanted to, could step in and standardize the building code across the province and let builders build more as of right, rather than have to go through lengthy municipal processes that kind of slow down those processes sometimes by years. And so there's a lot that this government can do to keep people working and to literally build this province up. And getting government out of the way will be a huge part of that.
Looking for more details on Doug Ford's new cabinet, you can find that on our website. Lots of information there. In the meantime, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the evening drive with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Sia. It feels like spring out there. I'm assuming for that reason, it's very busy.
Very, very busy. You know, everybody wants to get out and enjoy the weather. And if you're on the major routes, it's going to take you a while. If you're on the 401 in particular, we have a couple of issues hindering that start to that enjoyable weather. So this is the eastbound lanes of the 401. Just as you make your way in the express east of Dixie, it is a stalled vehicle, lonely by itself in the center lane. No tow on scene, no emergency crews, so it is creating a delay. From this point, the slowdowns continue on the 401 eastbound, also in the express. This is right underneath the Victoria overpass. You'll find the right lane blocked following a collision. This is the Victoria Park overpass. And you know what, a bit of good news. We were dealing with that long-standing vehicle fire cleanup. It was impacting the drive on the eastbound QEW east of Burloak. We had the 3 right lanes blocked following this collision and vehicle fire cleanup. Everything there cleared, but still a tough drive on the Gardner westbound as you try to make your way out of the downtown core. Delays start from Cherry Street out towards Dufferin. A heads up as well, if you're headed towards city streets, we are dealing with a collision blocking lanes on Victoria Park right at Finch. I'll send it back to you both.
Thanks, Adjoa.
You're welcome.
Mayor Olivia Chow's executive committee has adopted her economic action plan in response to U.S. tariffs.
Chow and her economic action team unveiled their plan to fight tariffs on Monday, including changes to procurement policies in favor of Canadian suppliers. The plan also includes an industrial property tax deferral to help businesses who'll be hit hard by the tariffs.
5:42 right now, 21 degrees, and it feels like that too. This is Live at 5.
And we're keeping a close eye on this story out of York Region. Police say TIC-16s are facing charges following a failed jewelry store robbery in Toronto, and it was all caught on camera. Steve Ryan is going to break that down next.
Welcome back. 6 teenagers are facing numerous charges after a failed jewelry store robbery in the Wilson and Dufferin area.
Let's bring in CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan for a closer look at this takedown. The images are quite stunning. Steve, give us the backstory here. What happened?
Well, there were 6 youth, 3 16-year-olds and 3 17-year-olds in a stolen vehicle, were on their way to commit a robbery, and the hold-up squad was nearby. The chopper was in the air. The chopper captured the entire arrest, the whole thing on in real time, and the police were able to locate and identify and arrest all 6 of these individuals. We're showing the video right now that came from the police chopper. So that, again, shows the importance of having a police helicopter, particularly this day and age in the GTA with the amount of crime that's going on. This is the best evidence that you can present at court, aside from the eyewitness accounts, would be this footage right here.
Okay, we're about to see these 6 suspects get into a vehicle. Can you walk us through what happens here?
So the police car is going to come into a scene right now, and one of the police vehicles will smash to the front of that stolen vehicle. The idea is to disable that vehicle because you do not want that car leaving with those 6 people in it, or one of them in it, for that matter. Anytime you have a pursuit, there's always a threat to public safety. So if you can cut that off at the initial stages, you do that. And that's what the police did right there, was disengage that vehicle.
So people watching this might be thinking, how did police do that so quickly? How did they know to box in the right vehicle with the right suspects? But the officers that are in the chopper are communicating with officers on the ground. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, that's right. There's a pilot, and then there's a police officer in with the chopper pilot, and that officer was giving a detailed sequence of events as to what was transpiring, almost live reporting. And the officers who were in the area happened to move in quickly and make the 6 arrests. There's a clip as well from York Regional Police. Let's go to the clip.
Oftentimes, we see young people that are being approached by older people and brought into employment. We do know that under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, that there's less serious repercussions that are being faced by people that are being caught and being arrested for these offenses, particularly young offenders that may not have been charged previously. In the definition of organized crime from a police perspective, really just means multiple people working together in order to commit an offense, as opposed to maybe the traditional things like street gangs or any crime groups that we traditionally would think of as being organized crime.
Steve, let's talk about those charges. What were these 6 teens charged with?
Robbery with a disguise, robbery with a weapon, possession of stolen property, which would have been the stolen vehicle. And one of the 17-year-olds was also charged with possession of an automobile master key. Typically, that is in the hands of a locksmith or a car dealer who uses one key to start many vehicles.
And we have to remind our viewers that we're talking about minors, which makes this so much more concerning. Steve Ryan, live in studio. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate your insights as always.
You got it.
You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Donald Trump chimes in on the Canadian federal election, talking about who he wants to see lead the country. More on Trump's comments coming up next with Lindsay. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump says he would have an easier time if Canada keeps its Liberal Prime Minister.
Yeah, this is making headlines all over the world and certainly on this side of the border. Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya for more on Trump's comments. A lot of people are reading into these comments, and I guess how you feel about it is dependent on who you're with in terms of your political affiliation.
Yeah, exactly. And we really don't know for sure whether Donald Trump is trying to use a little bit of reverse psychology here. It's not clear clear. What is clear is that this trade war is going to be the defining characteristic of this federal election once it is officially called, and Donald Trump adding fuel to that fire as well with his comments just last night on Fox News during an interview, talking a lot about Canada throughout that interview. And he basically said that he would prefer a liberal over a conservative. He said that's who he would rather deal with. And he had some words about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Take a listen.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So your end game is what with them?
So Donald Trump also kept saying that Canada is meant to be the 51st state. He went on to say that the U.S. doesn't need Canada's auto industry, lumber, or energy. And Laura Ingraham pressed Trump, saying that Trump is being tougher on Canada than many of the U.S.'s biggest adversaries. And Trump said that's because Canada is meant to be the 51st state. So he really kept going back to that. We're hearing reaction to this today, at least a little bit. Prime Minister Mark Carney has not commented on this supposed endorsement by Donald Trump, but Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre did have some words to say about this. Here's what he said.
And while Mr. Carney moved his corporate headquarters to New York, do you know that he moved his headquarters to Trump's hometown 6 days after Trump first threatened to tariff Canada? While these people here were worried about losing their jobs, Mark Carney was busy moving jobs to Trump's hometown. That's exactly the kind of weak, compromised, conflicted leadership that Donald Trump wants, and it's why he endorsed Mark Carney yesterday.
So Pierre Poilievre is probably right that Donald Trump does want a weaker leader to have to deal with. But whether, again, Donald Trump is using any kind of reverse psychology here, it's not clear. Obviously, the Liberals have been pegging Pierre Poilievre as someone who would be a weaker, more kind of agreeable person to deal with Donald Trump. And just lastly, Donald Trump was also asked in this interview what his end game was. And he said his end game is he doesn't want to have a big deficit. So really nothing about fentanyl at all right there. Back to you.
Lindsay, thank you so much for this. It's now 5:54, 21 degrees, and it feels like that too. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, Canadians are set to see some relief at the pump soon. We'll tell you more about this next.
Welcome back. Canada's Transportation Safety Board will release a preliminary report tomorrow into the crash of a Delta Airlines plane at Pearson Airport last month.
18 people were injured when that jet flipped upside down as it was landing on February 18th. The plane touched down after an 86-minute flight from Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. Pearson officials said they had been dealing with high winds and frigid temperatures earlier in the day. The TSB says a report will provide information on the progress of the investigation, but it is still too early to make conclusions on the causes of the accident. So don't expect those answers tomorrow.
A new analysis suggests Canadians will see some relief at the pumps when the consumer carbon price ends next month, but may not notice as much of a difference in other prices.
As of April 1st, Prime Minister Mark Carney is ending the consumer carbon levy in the 8 provinces and 2 territories that use the federal system. Desjardins says that will shave almost 18 cents from the cost of a liter of gas, and natural gas bills will fall almost 13%. The consumer carbon rebates that offset the cost of the carbon price will also end after the April 15th payments.
Ottawa is limiting the fees that banks can charge customers who don't have enough in their accounts to cover a check or other pre-authorized payment.
Starting in March of next year, the federal government is capping NSF fees at $10 for personal accounts and is prohibiting financial institutions from charging more than one fee in the span of 2 business days. Banks also won't be able to charge a fee if the account shortfall is less than $10.
5:58 right now, 21 degrees. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
And we are live tonight at the scene of a deadly high-rise fire on Grenoble Drive in North York. We just received an update from Toronto Fire. A female and a male were pulled from the 21st unit of this high-rise apartment building. The female has now died. She died in hospital, and the male is fighting for his life. Thank you for watching. That investigation, of course, continues. CTV News is next.